Hey.
Welcome back. Hey,
Sorry.
that's okay.
I cut you off there. I
No,
started off on the wrong foot.
no, that's okay. You ruined my intro, Brian, but that's totally appropriate. We're gonna keep all this. Welcome to Two Nobodies,
Yeah.
everyone. Glad to have everyone come back. Thanks for joining us. I have a really great guest today. You know, a couple of times I've had a few friends on my podcast who I haven't connected with in a while, and this gentleman in front of me is one of those guys. But Brian was a friend that I was very close with over through high school and into university, and we lost touch. But you know what? It's I'm just really happy to have him here. So Brian, welcome to Two Nobodies. Really appreciate you having me, coming on the podcast on Saturday morning. You know, it's not always the great time, but glad you made time for me.
Yeah,
So
no, it's good. I'm super excited to talk to you again and to do a podcast. So yeah,
we look a bit different. I feel like since we
we
last
look
met,
different.
we're
Yeah.
you got a bit of a shiny spot in your top of your head. I'm losing some. I got a lot of
I
grays. And
polished it this morning
did you
just for
polish it?
this. Yeah. So I took the
You
rag
actually
to
put something on your head?
it. I
No,
just shaved my head.
you just shave your
That's
head.
basically it.
Okay, you don't use any
Yeah.
special like bombs or anything on your scalp.
No, I should. I
Yeah,
should. I've been
yeah,
told, for dry skin and starting to get all those age wrinkles and
yeah.
stuff like that.
I just feel like guys who are, and I don't know, and maybe this is coming my way, but like guys who are bald, I feel like there's some care that goes on the top of their head, but I actually don't really know.
It's just like shaving your head is kind of time consuming
Mm,
and yeah, I think it's like shaving your face as well. Not something I do much either, as you can
yeah,
see. But yeah, no, I think it's like you definitely have to put some kind of lotion on just like when you're shaving your face, like
yeah,
aftershave, whatever.
yeah.
Again, I'm not particularly good at doing that, so but and even shaving my head, like I think if I had like an office job or something where I had to be presentable all the time,
Yeah,
I think I would probably shave my head like every other day.
yeah.
I would probably only let it go like yeah for one day in between, but just because it
Well,
starts to get kind of gross.
I was gonna say, like, does it start to get a bit of a shadow on top? Like, how quickly it only
Yeah,
takes it?
it's just like I feel like after about it looks okay for a couple of days, and then
Yeah.
after like three, four, five, definitely by day five, like you're starting to look kind
Mm,
of gross.
mm.
And it's like it's just because it comes out like I when I started shaving my head, it was actually still there was still hair here at the
Yeah,
top,
yeah.
but by the time I got to I guess by the time I was shaving my head for probably a couple of years, like I looked in the mirror and was like, oh yeah, like I if I tried to grow my hair out now, I couldn't.
Yeah.
So
It's a good look
yeah,
for you. It's
yeah,
working for
thanks.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
Would you say it's does somebody in your family experience baldness? Like, is it
oh
genetic?
like
Would you say?
everyone. Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
I think so. Me and my brothers, we all basically started showing signs of baldness at like I think 18, 19. Honestly, like
Oh,
19
I don't remember
probably
that.
19, 20. Yeah, like man, yeah, no. By university, like I was already showing signs of it.
Like in the
Um,
crown first, or did it kind of start from the front, or?
for me, I think it was the same for my brothers. Like I have two older brothers. And we all like basically it was like a generalized
Okay.
like thinning on top. It
Yeah.
wasn't like I would have preferred like one of those like what do they call this
The
again? Like
cul-de-sacs or whatever.
was it the crow's nest? No,
Oh, okay.
that's
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
See,
I
the
may
guys
be
have
making
different
that
names for everything. I've heard the cul-de-sac because it kind of like you lose it up here and then you have a little bit right here, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, we didn't get that. We just got this like generalized like patchiness, which is
Uh,
like horrible.
yeah.
Sort of a side note. I don't know if you want to go into this.
You go
I
wherever you
know we're
want to go,
just
man.
starting to talk, but um, my brothers and I we went on a medication for it.
Mm.
It's called Propecia.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah.
it helps with so it actually worked. Like I went on it for a few years and it
Yeah.
actually totally worked.
Mm.
But I did get to the point where there were some side effects that I was noticing that were not so good.
Mm.
And I'm actually like a strong proponent of not going on medication
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
for, especially for something like balding. I just feel like, um, I guess, everyone's got a different head. Some people's heads are pointier than others and
You talking about
maybe
my
not as
yeah,
nicely
you talking
shaped.
about my head? Is that what you're talking about?
But yeah, I'm talking about yours. I can
Yeah.
see through your hair right there. No, um, honestly, like if you can go bald, I think it's like it's like the best experience. It's freeing. It's just like maybe it takes like for me, honestly, it didn't take that long to get over once. And maybe it was because I was balding for so many years and
Mm,
I was like trying to keep my hair and it was working for a while. But, I don't know if it's that I had time to get over it.
mm.
But I think honestly, if I look back, I should have shaved my head at like 19 or 20,
Wow.
even though that was young. Like everyone's so concerned about it. Uh, I don't know. For me, I think, maybe it's just again because I have the head for it.
Yeah, I'm definitely scared of that time, to be honest. And like my dad had thin hair, but he wasn't balding. I think I got my grandfather's genes because he was completely bald. So, but
Oh,
yeah,
really?
I definitely have a fear for it. But yes, Brian has noted that I have a pointy shaped head, which I told him about, which is all good. It's
It's
fine. We
not it's not true. He mentioned this before. We talked briefly before, so
it's yeah
um
it's all good. I
I
guess I
don't
can just
care
tell
about
people the
people's heads.
story of how when like apparently when I was little, my grandmother thought babies' heads are not shaped properly, right? And so she was a little concerned, and so she thought she could actually do something about that. And I think it probably
Is this an
contributed.
actual
This
story?
is this is an actual story, yeah. And I think she contributed to the ridge on my head, and I know that I literally have a ridge because I was in a study where I had to go for an MRI, like for because it was a brain study or whatever, and so they do an MRI, and I saw I saw on the scan literally a ridge of my bone. So I feel like I can't shave my head because it just would not look good on me, although it's intriguing. So I'm
Yeah,
trying to preserve my hair as much as I can.
I see.
Yeah.
You can always try, but then once you try,
Will it grow back the same? I don't know. It might take a
yeah,
long. Yeah, I guess so.
I don't know. Anyway, you look good the way you are right
I
now, so
appreciate it. I appreciate it. I think we've.
uh,
I think
you don't have anything to worry about, I don't
yeah.
think.
I think we're both aging well. So
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
feel like I guess I'm getting more concerned about it now. It's
Are
it's
you?
getting to that age where I'm starting to think about it more.
What's your health and fitness like? You still taking care of yourself, going to
I
the gym
don't
or
work
anything?
out enough anymore. That's
Okay.
my big
I
problem.
remember
I'm just starting to get
when we like throughout university, you were pretty committed, I think.
I was very committed. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Up until I was in good shape until late 20s. In my 30s, I really started to let go. It actually coincided with all the things that we're probably going to talk about later in this.
Yeah.
Just the changes in career and
Mm.
the changes in job. I
Yeah.
just got so obsessed and stuck in worrying about all the other stuff that I was
Yeah.
trying to do. So
Yeah.
I sort of lost touch with it. And then I think just,
What about now
different
though?
relationships and sort of I've hopped around. I've lived in multiple different places in Toronto and like I don't I think I tried to count the number of places I've lived and like
Hmm.
this is not like exotic locations. This is just like like oh, I've lived in this part of Toronto and then I've
Right.
lived in this part of Toronto.
Right.
And it's like ridiculous. It's like 30 places or something like that.
What?
Yeah.
Just
I
but
mean,
do you own something now or do
I
you
do
are
own something.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My partner.
When did you buy into the market?
We actually bought in 2020.
Okay. That's a good time.
So just just at the beginning of COVID. Well, it was like yeah, the first stage of it, I guess. The first
That
wave,
was
still
that not
second
a good
wave,
time
whatever it
for
was.
real estate in terms of buying? Like in the beginning because people were kind
It
of panicking
was
and
starting to get worse.
okay.
Like the prices were going up. I think if you actually look at the prices now, we're maybe still a little bit better than like the house has appreciated a little bit in value, but um, it definitely like you know the price was elevated.
Yeah.
We paid this, then it went. all the way, like crazy at what into 2021
Mm.
when
Yep.
everything was like inflation was starting to take hold.
Yep.
And then yeah, I think since then it's dropped. It's hovering somewhere around
Well, the
like where
government
it
got
was.
involved too, right? Like they tried to reduce foreign ownership. They, I think during that time, didn't they correct the the like the Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation's like requirements? I think for insurance, like you needed to have like 20% down payment. I think it was around that time, or maybe was it
Yeah, I
before?
thought
I
that
don't
was
know.
maybe even before.
Was it
Yeah,
before? Okay,
because I know
okay,
we had to have at least
okay,
about that as far as I remember.
okay.
Uh, but yeah.
So you lived all over Toronto. I mean, we're both North York boys, but like, is there a favorite part of Toronto? Like, whereabouts, which
So
burb in Toronto
now
are you
I'm
now?
in Leslieville, and I've sort of
Oh, okay.
gone. Leslieville has sort of been, or I guess it's technically Riverside.
Mm.
We're close to the DVP,
Yeah.
near Broadview and Queen.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, like I guess like Leslieville area, east of the DVP area,
Mm.
I've sort of been in and out of this area for whatever reason. It's like I just keep having uh this neighborhood just sort of pulls me back. I think it's
Mm.
partially because it's like it's a bit of a quieter neighborhood.
Okay.
It's not as developed. It's still downtown, but it's not like it's never done quite as well for
Yeah.
whatever reason. It was always like changing. It was a bit of a rough area for a while. It's slowly gotten better.
Mm.
But yeah, so I've ended up here for whatever reason. Then when I was in school, I went to U of T for a while. So I lived on Spadina around then. And I think I've lived in the West End. I was working in the West End. I had a shop in the West End,
Mm.
so near Lansdowne,
Mm.
the Ubisoft building.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, that's why I've been all over the place. And like before that, you probably were the same, but with the co-op program,
Mm.
I ended up like, you know, each time would
Moving
be
different
somewhere different.
places. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you, now that you own, are you the kind of person who wants to, like, get involved in the community, connect with neighbors, that sort of thing? Or are you pretty to yourself?
I've always been just kind of a quiet guy, I guess.
Yeah.
A little bit introverted, but actually, this neighborhood has been really good. I don't know what it is, but
Mm.
I've already made some. I've done metal work for like probably three or four people in the neighborhood so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
And that's just like when we moved in, we actually like there were some families that are the same age as us. So this is the first, honestly, like the first time I've had this happen. I think every other neighborhood in Toronto wherever I've been, maybe it's because I've just been renting,
Mm.
but I show up there, like no one knows me. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
occasionally, yeah. I've lived in houses where it's like a unit in a
Mm-hmm.
multi-unit house, and yeah, I end up like being friends with the people that live there. But even I've lived at some condos where I hardly talk to anyone, and
Yeah. It's a different
um,
feeling, right? Like, I don't know, when I've rented too, like, even if you have the intention to connect, you just feel like you're not really, I don't know, at least I've always felt like I don't really feel like I'm a part of the community just yet. But like,
yeah,
when
yeah.
now that
I
we own
think
a house, like, I'm like, okay, I'm here, I've established roots, I need to participate, I need to do
yeah, it's
something more.
probably
Yeah.
a mental thing for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
And that's actually a good point because I remember when I was younger, just yeah, like feeling like I just totally didn't know where I was going to be, and
Mm.
I felt like I was always a nomad, right?
Mm.
I think like basically what you just said. Like I
Yeah.
just never felt like I belonged anywhere because I was always moving, and I knew I would always be changing careers too at that time. It just
Mm.
felt like, um, and then I guess maybe being a quiet person too. It just sort of like I would just sort of go into my little
Yeah.
place and
Yeah.
uh, be like, I'm only going to be here for 4 months anyway. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's been different times. Sometimes, again, like I've been lucky and there's good people around. So,
Yeah. I want to get into sort of like you said, the just the moving, and you always thinking that you wanted to go different places. But going back to the bald thing, you said that I asked you if you've been on a podcast, and you said you were actually on one where you talked about this topic, and
Yeah,
just about like the health effects and all this. But like it is, it definitely is something that impacts a lot of guys, right? As far as
yeah.
just like their mental state. But like, what was did you learn anything from that, or even through your own process as far as just kind of overcoming? I know you said it's been some time, right? Like you said, 19 is when it started to show, but um,
Yeah,
was there a process for you that you
yeah,
kind of had to overcome, I guess, or go through?
yeah. I mean, totally. I
Yeah,
like I went on the medication because my brothers did, and it worked for them.
yeah,
And that was totally like just the fear of balding. Yeah, I
yeah,
think it's like,
yeah,
especially when you're young and
yeah,
like, I hadn't had too many experiences yet in
yeah,
general. Like,
yeah,
you know, especially relationships. You think that women aren't gonna like you
yeah,
if you're bald,
yeah.
which is ridiculous. But for when you're that age, um, you don't understand that like it's not a big deal. Um, so yeah, if I could go back and tell like my 18, 19-year-old self, I'd just say like do it now, just shave your
Just
head.
embrace it
It'll
right
be
now.
fine. It'll
Yeah,
be better.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I worried about it for sure. I think I got over it. I probably as soon as the medication was sort of causing problems, and then I had other health issues, which we might talk about as well. But as soon as I sort of went through some of those issues, I think by my mid 20s, I kind of went through into a phase where it was like just screw it.
mm,
I'm gonna just live my life however I want.
that's
I'm
awesome.
gonna just do whatever
Yeah.
I want. I've got to really just not care what people think as much. Try to at least not care about what people think as much.
Was that
I
like
think
a
it, it,
switch for
it
you, or did you need some help to get to that point, or were you just
yeah,
like
I
F it,
needed,
or
I've gone through some therapy of,
mm,
like anxiety
yeah,
sort of problems that I think a lot of guys go through. Um, and there's a stigma around it, of course.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So, yeah, no, like as soon as I got to that point, I feel like there was a really freeing few years. I think when I was 25, 26 is when
mm,
I really started. I don't know how I did it exactly,
mm,
but I think the fear of dying too, because of the
mm,
health concern I had.
mm,
Um, yeah, like it just sort of put me in this direction where I was like, okay, balding is definitely not a problem.
mm.
I didn't shave my head at the time
It was
because
the
it
least of
like
your concerns, right? At that point, I guess.
yeah, I like my hair was fine because I had been on that medication, so it was still
Yeah,
looking all right.
yeah,
But like in terms of other things, I didn't care as much about like how I looked. And I
mm,
think that was actually also about fitness. Like
mm.
part of the reason I wanted to work out all the time when I was younger was because I thought I should have a six pack. I thought I
Sure.
should like have muscles
Yeah.
and um like it's good to work out, it's good to be in shape,
Mm,
but I think there was a shift in my mind where I stopped thinking about how I looked
right.
and I just started thinking about, oh, I want to have good heart health. I want to have,
Right.
like I want to have good muscles so I can lift things,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
because useful things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Functional, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. That Propecia, I tried it once too, and I did wasn't on it very long because the side effects, like you can get
did
sexual
you
side
have them as
effects.
well?
Yeah, I had
Yeah,
sexual side effects, and I was like, it is not worth it. Like, I am sorry, I'm not going
yeah,
through
no,
that.
no, I
So
had exactly the same.
yeah,
Um,
I had a really
Mine,
low
mine
dose
were
too.
mine were like minor,
Yeah.
like minor to start.
Okay.
So it was like I didn't know for sure that it was that right
Mm,
away. And then as time went on, it kind of got worse, and it got to the point where I was like, oh, no, this is like an actual thing happening,
yeah.
and it's pretty horrible to be like a 20 something year old, and
And have to deal with that trade off, right? Like,
yeah, like it's not a trade-off
yeah,
worse.
yeah.
Yeah, Not
I
at all.
remember getting a really bad dry mouth too from taking it. I don't know if you experienced
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah, really, really bad. And so it was just very uncomfortable. And I was like, my libido is shit. I'm like, this is not worth it. So
Oh man.
yeah.
Yeah, that's horrible.
And it was like a really
Um,
low dose too. I remember my doctor being like, I asked him about it too. I'm like, what are the chances of these particular side effects? And he's like, well, there's always a chance, but it's very, very low. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I'm going to give you a really low dose, but I was just really sensitive to it. So
yeah. No, it's like I know I guess some people don't react to it, but oh man, it's I don't understand why anyone would want to go on that
yeah, 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 yeah.
and why it's not talked about more. I think for a while it was talked about, but I remember still thinking like I went to the doctor, talked about it.
Mm,
It didn't sound like the doctor thought it was a common side effect.
mm,
So I was getting the feeling from a lot of people like it wasn't. My brothers didn't seem to have problems with it. So um, it for whatever reason, yeah, like it didn't seem that common to me, and
mm,
that was like actually another thing that I think people don't talk about these kinds of things happening,
mm,
right?
mm-hmm.
So I don't think I had like a lot of people to talk to about it. I was probably self-conscious for going on it anyway in the first place in my early 20s. And then to have to talk to other guys that like about sexual side effects that
Guys
are
weren't
like
doing that, right? Like,
you
yeah.
think guys in their 50s are starting to have
Mm-hmm.
maybe or
Mm-hmm.
60s, but
Mm-hmm.
like not a 20-year-old
No,
like
no.
doesn't make any sense.
Well, and this would
So
have been like late 2000s, right? Yeah, our 20s would have been late
yeah,
2000s. Like even
yeah,
that, like that wasn't that long. That wasn't long ago. But there weren't like podcasts out there. There weren't guys,
no,
forums and stuff like that. Now there's so many resources. So many guys are talking about it, and it's a much more comfortable
I think
space. I
that's
mean, there's still room, but obviously it's just there's more. There are more resources out there for guys, right?
yeah, and that's actually a really interesting thing because I think that's affected a lot of areas in my life, at
Mm,
least. It's just like the having all these outlets and people to talk to and things being more open now. I
yeah.
feel like we did go through a phase just because of our age or
Mm,
a period, I should say, where uh, things weren't being talked about
mm-hmm.
for the same reason, or they're just like I guess YouTube was around, but there weren't videos as
No.
much talking about
Yeah.
how to do things or um, you know,
Facebook, I think, was still like, we're talking about probably really took off between like 2005, 2008 kind of thing, right? But like still,
yeah. So we
yeah,
were in university
yeah,
when it
yeah,
took off. I remember that, right?
yeah, yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. It's like we're not that old, but we've actually seen social media come through.
Some huge
So
disruptions for sure. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. The other piece to this whole hair thing is of the thyroid side. Like I got a thyroid issue, and I know that like I'm doing some work on it. And that's kind of preserved my hair. But I know for you because you lost your thyroid, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's I imagine that would have complicated your hair loss even more. So I would think.
yeah. So that was the other health issue I had. Had surgery to remove my thyroid when
Mm,
I was in my the same around the same time, so mid 20s. I think it was
yeah,
25.
yeah,
Um, and yeah, that was the life-changing event that I mentioned before.
yeah, yeah. And was that something that just was it kind of tracking that way, or did it just was a big surprise all of a sudden, or
Um,
like did you
yeah,
know through blood work that it was your the thyroid was starting to fail, or
I
like
had a chest X-ray for
okay,
a different reason.
okay,
Um, when I was like 22, 23,
okay,
and then they said everything's good, but they found something on my thyroid. So it was totally unexpected. It was out of nowhere.
yeah,
And um, yeah, so I think I went 2 years without knowing what it was.
mm,
I didn't think anything of it at the time. That like they saw it, and the doctor said, "Okay, we're gonna have to look into this now." And I remember thinking, like, "What do you mean? Like, can't you just ignore it? Like, it's probably nothing.
right, right,
What do you mean?
yeah,
Like, why would it be anything?" Because I wasn't feeling any symptoms. There
yeah,
were
yeah,
no problems, but it was just a little bump on my
mm,
thyroid,
mm,
and so I went 2 years without like I think I did another check a year later, and then
Mm,
another check 2 years later,
mm,
and it was slow growing. So, but they did find that it had grown.
mm,
So by the time 2 years had gone by, they're like, okay, this is starting to get to the point where this is not nothing anymore. Like the fact that it's grown to this size
mm.
is concerning. And then, so they actually, and you still couldn't see anything. You
Right,
could maybe, like, I didn't know where to look, but
right.
some
You could.
people could, doctors could feel
Okay.
where it was. Um, and yeah, so it eventually got to the point where I did some more tests, and then each test kept coming back worse and worse. It was one of
Mm,
those things like, okay, it's either A or it's either the good thing or a
right,
bunch of bad things.
right.
And then it was the bunch of bad things. And then they would go to that subset and be like, it's either the good one out of this set of bad things
Okay.
or it's the really bad thing.
Yeah.
And then it was the subset of bad things until they did a biopsy and then came back as cancer. So
Okay.
um, I
And
had
so,
surgery within 2 months, I think.
yeah.
They decided to remove the whole thing. The
Now,
surgeon
like,
scared the crap out of me.
why remove the whole, like, was it absolutely necessary to remove the whole thing? Or maybe I'm not so in tune with the thyroid gland. Like, could you keep part of it, or it was kind of an all or none thing?
That's a big topic that
Okay.
there's debate on. But the reason my surgeon decided to go with removing the whole thing just because there's less risk of it coming back if you remove all
Okay.
the tissue.
Yeah.
Because if you have cancer
Yeah.
in the thyroid, there's something potentially that happened. I think like the thyroid's very sensitive to radiation.
Mm,
And if you were exposed to radiation in the environment or something like that, which I don't know why that would be for me because there
mm,
was no specific situation where I was exposed to radiation that I know
mm,
of. But yeah, uh if the thyroid's been exposed to something that caused a cancerous nodule,
yeah.
then it's possible that it could form again somewhere else,
Mm,
right? So I think his thinking was just take out the whole thing, and that way he basically said you should be good. Like you should be as soon as they took it out, he's like, you now should be able to live your life like anyone else, like
mm-hmm.
without worrying about anything coming back. So I still get checkups for it, but they don't they don't typically seem that concerned about it coming back, and so far everything's been normal.
So you just, I imagine you have a regiment of medication that you have to take, or like, is it
Yeah,
pretty?
it's just one pill. It's just one pill I take in the morning every day,
Okay. Okay.
and it basically just replaces the hormone, and I don't have to worry about it.
And have you noticed anything in terms of, I mean, it's such a long time ago now, but like just the quality of life now versus like before? Any changes that you noticed, I guess, with just not having a
Yeah,
thyroid?
um, I think actually I'm feeling it a bit even now. I feel like my voice is getting a bit constrained. Sometimes I feel like um, in my throat feels a bit different. Like it's
Okay.
not as easy to talk as it used to be.
Okay.
Sometimes like it'll get tired more easily
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah.
Like it's not noticeable. It's not like a huge problem.
Mm.
Um, but I can't like I notice just like a tightness in my throat,
Yeah.
and it sort of comes up more easily than it would have before. So it's
Okay.
it's like a minor issue, but it's sort of there all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember this, when you told me about this. I don't think it was that long, maybe after, because I remember hearing about it, and I was just floored, and I was feeling really sad about the whole thing. But then also, just it was during, it was, if I'm not mistaken, it was also during a period of when, did you just finish your bachelor's, or was it?
Yeah, I finished my well no, it was I finished my bachelor's. I I actually went traveling for half a year, and it was actually when I came back from traveling
Okay.
that I was working a bit here, and I think it was around that time that just before I went back to do my master's actually. So it was
Mm,
probably 2 years after It's hard to remember the years now,
Yeah.
but I think it was like 2010, is it
Mm,
possibly?
mm,
2009, 2010. I
yeah.
think 2000, if it's 2 years after 2009, like fall, August, or just before the fall, so
Hmm.
August, I think that's when they did the surgery.
Yeah.
So I was just going back to my master's. Yeah.
Mm. It's you're I don't know. I think you're one of those guys where I imagine that when like in the high school yearbooks how people would be like most likely to, or like there's
Yeah.
this. I feel like with you, because and listeners wouldn't know this, but like you were the top of our class, man. Like you're always just and the thing I always appreciate about you is like you were so humble in school. Like you wouldn't gloat about like your academic successes. You worked really really hard. Like you're always somebody that I looked up to from that standpoint. And but I think I imagine that if folks from our high school were listening to this, that they would be surprised to know that your path hasn't necessarily been as steady and as linear as maybe we would have imagined from when you left high school. Because I think when I imagine people from high school would be like, Brian Cates, like he had to go through some bumps. Like this guy was this guy was
Yeah.
the man. Like this guy was the person you go to after your exam to check the answers because he knew everything. Like I mean, I think we
Hmm.
all knew that you were going to be somebody like who was doing something like just just something of what we typically call as successful, you know what I mean, like.
Hmm.
And so it's you go into Waterloo, do engineering, and top of the class in Waterloo engineering, which is I have a friend who's been through that program, and he's like, Brian's like a god there, like he's so well known in Waterloo
Yeah, that's so
engineering.
crazy when I heard you say that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
surprising to me.
yeah. He's
Just
like
that
every
another class would have heard that too.
yeah, because he was a year
I
before, and
wouldn't I would not have thought that.
yeah, he's like a year before, and he said that everyone knew your name, and so it was like this expectation that like people have because you're creating this track, but then it doesn't necessarily go that way. So tell me about like just as you're finishing Waterloo engineering, or maybe it was after, but just like you feeling like not so sure this is for me, and then things start to change.
Yeah, I think I started to feel that even from the beginning. Uh,
Okay.
like I fast tracked, right? I
Yeah.
think the whole story unfolded. I think for me, the whole path that I've now gone down. I think things start to go wrong, if you could call it
Mm,
that, just from the point of view of typical success stories.
mm,
Um, things started to go off the
mm.
path from the minute I decided to fast track and go to university, and possibly even to do mechanical engineering at Waterloo a year earlier.
I hated that you left a year early, man. I was so bummed when you decided to do that because,
Yeah.
yeah. But so sorry.
Yeah,
It
I
started to
mean,
go wrong from
I
that standpoint.
I don't remember, like, I don't remember much. I think I was happy to leave high school in
Mm,
some ways, like happy to move on and
mm,
happy to like maybe I honestly I can't even remember how I felt
mm,
that much, but I know the decision to fast track was we were like it's almost like destiny or something because we were that year that was double cohort. So
yes. Yeah.
we were on the older side of the double cohort where they
Mm-hmm.
said, "Oh, you guys are gonna have so much trouble getting into university,"
Mm,
which is so stupid in
mm-hmm.
retrospect.
Mm,
But everyone was concerned. It was just this worry
right.
that we weren't going to do well because we were now, instead of one group of people, we were now two groups
Mm,
fighting for one group of jobs,
mm.
or like
Spaces.
what
Yeah.
would be jobs,
Yeah.
space,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, so yeah, like I remember my parents being nervous about that. I don't know if your
Mm.
parents were nervous about that,
I don't
or
remember. I don't think I was very concerned now that you bring it up. Honestly, maybe I just had like
yeah,
this blind faith that I was like, I'm gonna get to where I need to get to, but I don't remember honestly.
Yeah, and
So,
I think like my family might have been a little bit more of a nervous family,
mm,
right? Like where for whatever reason, like a bunch of people that sort of worry a bit more about outcomes.
right.
Um, and so I think my parents were definitely sort of concerned about that.
Mm,
And I was doing well in school at that time. And I guess it just sort of made sense. I started doing extremely well in math and I guess science as well. And that was probably in grade 10. I didn't know how good I was at math until grade 9 or grade 10,
oh, okay.
really.
Mm,
I actually didn't excel at like arithmetic
mm,
or like I'm not a quick thinker necessarily in certain ways.
mm,
All right, I'm not an obvious quick thinker.
mm,
When someone, if people were to ask a question, I wouldn't be the first guy to go, "Oh, I know what you're talking
mm,
about."
mm.
Or like if someone says, "You're gonna ask me a question later," in this, right? If someone asks me a
Make me
question to
look
think
bad
of
right
stuff
now,
on the
eh? Yeah,
spot,
yeah,
not trying to make you feel
yeah.
bad.
All right.
If someone asks the question like, "Come up with this" on the
Yeah,
spot, I'm
yeah.
like horrible. I don't know. My mind goes like, "Duh." It's like Homer Simpson, right? Like,
This
duh,
is
duh,
this
duh,
is
duh, duh,
I.
duh.
I would have never thought that about you, honestly. You've never showed that. At least wouldn't have been in your presence. So
I swear. So it's
yeah,
like that's for me, it's sometimes it's like this there's yeah, I have no idea what that's about, but I
okay,
definitely go into Homer Simpson mode when someone
okay,
asks the question. It's like an aversion to answering the question
right,
and my brain just goes somewhere else.
yeah,
So for whatever reason, I did really well in math and I didn't
mm,
have those problems with math, but I had those problems with arithmetic, but
mm,
the deeper questions in math, like calculus,
mm,
once it started getting more abstract and more interesting in some ways, that's when I really excelled, I guess, because I could think in that way. But it wasn't
mm,
like a fast way of thinking
mm,
necessarily. So I was doing so well in that I was able to sort of um, yeah, I think fast tracking didn't seem like a huge problem. But
yeah,
once I went down that road, then by the time I got to university, I remember going to yeah, starting my engineering
mm,
uh, at Waterloo and thinking I'm gonna be one of the like this is gonna be difficult. I remember thinking we had a bunch of
mm.
tests to start off, and I remember thinking I'm not gonna be at the top. Like this is I was one of the top students at our
Coming
high
out of high
school,
school,
but
yeah, yeah.
now I'm gonna be one of the
Small fish in the pond, yeah,
middle. Yeah, I'm a small fish now.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like all these guys are as good as I was. So I didn't think I would be I didn't think I would like perform well compared to everyone else. And then all of a sudden, like I started doing tests at Waterloo and it started showing that I was at the top of my game
Mm,
at Waterloo and even more so than high school. I
mm,
almost felt like high school there were some competitors.
mm,
Whereas in university, I actually felt like I had not a lot of competitors in my mechanical engineering.
wow.
This sounds really arrogant, but
No, no, I
um,
not at all.
I don't know. Mechanical engineering wasn't known for being the type of engineering that the really the exceptionally smart guys necessarily
Oh,
go to.
okay.
Uh, it's stupid saying this kind of stuff because maybe I'm wrong.
Like
But
where would the more smarter engineers go
I
to?
think the guys that are like really math oriented and like extremely like mechanical engineering is quite math intensive.
Mm,
So it's not easy if you're not into math. But um I always thought like computer engineering was where,
mm,
the top guys would go
mm,
or something. Like I was told to go into computer engineering.
mm,
I just didn't want
mm,
to. So anyway.
mm.
What were we I feel like I'm going off track here.
No, no,
What
we were
were we
just
saying?
well, you were just you kind of walking through your track of how you fast tracked out of high school, you came into university, but essentially it was the point of just like when did things kind of switch for you, like
Yeah.
coming out of university, where you're just like this isn't for me anymore.
Okay, yeah. So I think the problem that started to happen was I started to do really well,
Mm,
like I was saying, and I didn't think I would be as good, but I was. And then compared to everyone else, I sort of went on this path of like isolation.
mm,
It was like I was already a quiet guy to begin with, but I don't remember feeling like isolated in high school. Like I had a good group of friends, right?
mm-hmm,
Like I don't
mm-hmm,
remember feeling like the smart guy who doesn't have any friends
mm.
or like is so quiet that doesn't have a social life, right?
Yeah.
And I think I struggled to find my place
Mm,
at Waterloo.
mm,
That was the problem because
mm.
I started to get like outcast from the minute I got there and started doing well. It sort
By
of
other by your colleagues?
I don't and maybe it was my own fault too. You know,
Oh,
like in
okay.
hindsight, I don't want to blame anyone for it because
Mm-hmm,
I think there were people that were being inclusive and I think honestly it was just I didn't relate as well for whatever
mm,
reason. I wasn't relating to the group of people that I was with.
mm-hmm,
And um yeah, so I remember sort of not being able to find my group,
mm.
not being able to find my friends. And then uh being top of the class kind of made it worse
Yeah.
because then people found out within the first year
Mm.
and then or they probably found out pretty
Yeah.
quickly before even like a couple of days in, right?
Yeah.
I would always sit at the back of the class.
Mm.
I was the guy at the back of the class, didn't say anything,
Yeah.
never asked a question,
Yeah.
never did anything. So
Yeah.
at the beginning, guys were just like, "Who's that guy?"
Yeah.
And I remember I had frosted tips. I had my
Really?
hair
In
dyed.
university?
Yeah, like when I first got there, I had blonde. I had dyed my hair blonde. It looked horrible. Um,
I feel like you would have been
it
like
was
five
so
years late
bad.
on that one or something. I don't know.
No, no, no.
Yeah.
That was yeah, yeah. It was horrible because I had tons of acne too. So
Okay.
I had like all these acne scars and like this horrible blonde hair.
You've aged
Um,
well, my friend. Like I said, you've aged well.
but yeah, so I remember sitting at the back class, not talking to people, just sort of doing my own thing.
Mm.
And so at some point, people started to realize that I was doing well in tests, and then people started to try to copy from me, like.
Yeah.
And then, but then they were just like, I got the nickname number one soon after that
I love
because
it.
they actually ranked us a bit. I mean, this is the fault of Waterloo too.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they actually ranked everyone. I don't know what the purpose was, why they were trying to do this,
And they'd
but
share the rankings?
they shared the rankings. Sorry, they didn't share who was what,
Okay.
but you would get an email. It was like a secret email that would
Yeah.
say you are this rank out of like 200 people, right? Whatever it was. It might have only been 100 or something. Um, but they would say you are, and for me it said you are one out of 100, whatever it was. And then from then on, every term I got one out of 100, and then it became like a challenge for me. It was almost like
Mm.
it was just blindly just okay. I found a new thing to focus on. I need to
Mm-hmm.
get one out of 100
Mm.
because I need to like claim my title, right?
Yeah.
It was almost like if you're a boxing champ. Like you
Sure.
couldn't let someone
Yeah.
take over
Yeah.
after
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? Like you're the champ.
Yeah. 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 That competitive side really
So
came out.
yeah, it came out in that sense, and I don't know if that was their intention of like why they wanted to do that. But the bad side of it was that my nickname was number one,
Mm.
and people started treating me like I was, like different. Like there was,
And not from like a
and again, I
respect
don't
sense
think
though.
people were that. People respected me, but I think there was always um, it would just like the conversation would always go to that I was number one or and again I was also going through other stuff
Mm.
myself and just the fact that I had fast tracked
Hmm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
was younger I don't think I'd matured as much as like naturally you're like every year that you mature at that age is
Mm-hmm.
important.
Mm-hmm.
And I tried to fast track that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I was like still quiet, still introverted, not knowing how to relate to some of these people. Um, and just things got out of hand. Like
Yeah.
I think that's like it's probably a small thing that started it, but things got out of hand where I started to feel worse and worse and worse.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I mean. I don't think I can blame anyone for it. But it's like it's not even like I got bullied. Like it's not like the number one thing became a bullying thing. It was just I retreated into this place of not feeling like I was connecting with anyone. And my mental state started to suffer. I started to go like
Mm-hmm.
way down. Just just felt horrible about myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think relationships weren't going so well.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had a girlfriend from high school. I won't talk about
No, maybe
her.
let's not go there.
Let's not go there. But
No.
I remember, that was sort of a crazy relationship of ups and downs at that age. And then by the time I got to university, I think I went out with her again for one summer.
Mm-hmm.
And then after we broke up, I kind of like didn't know how to start a new relationship. Like I wasn't meeting girls.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't because our class was mostly men.
Right.
Like uh so
Can I interrupt you right there? Because I don't know if you
yeah,
remember this, but I don't know what year it was, but I remember we walked towards my campus, which is Applied Health Sciences, and it was I think it was summer or maybe it was early fall, and is it definitely very co-ed in kinesiology, and there were like
yeah,
girls throwing frisbees and all this stuff. I remember walking with you to Applied Health. I don't know if you remember this, and you're like, where is this place? What is this place? Why are there so many attractive women here? Like, I don't understand what's going on. Or like, Rupesh, you don't know that there are no women in engineering. It was like this kind of halo around applied health sciences because people in kinesiology generally are fit, they're active, right? For the
yeah,
most
yeah,
part. And I think you were just like, where did I walk into? So it was really funny to see your
yeah, yeah. And
reaction.
I mean
So,
that was like it's a serious problem. Like
yeah.
I don't think it's healthy. It's not
Yeah.
healthy for a young man to be um surrounded by mostly men and then have no like there weren't a lot of outlets or places for a
Yeah.
young guy who's introverted to
Yeah.
like I would have had to go to the bar all the time
Right.
and that wasn't my thing.
Right.
Like it just wasn't my thing.
Yeah.
So I found I didn't meet women as much.
Yeah.
And like I became really good friends with a couple of the girls that were in my class. Um but yeah, I think in general I was always like up until that point I was I always had like a good amount of friends that were girls, and I
Yeah.
always felt comfortable in groups of women. I
Mm.
I, I liked female influence just in my life in
Mm.
general,
Yeah.
and to to start to feel like it was never even something I worried about up until
Mm.
Waterloo,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, like Waterloo, it was just this environment where there's no women around, like for engineers, and it's just a horrible. It's not good.
Yeah. I
So
yeah Brian, who's another friend of mine, different Brian. He was telling me how because he was in mechanical engineering. He said that you could count the number of women on in the class, right? Like you could. I think they were assigning them numbers, right? Like oh, this is number one or number two, or you
yeah,
know
which
what I
is
mean? Yeah,
also horrible.
yeah,
Yeah.
terrible. Yeah,
I mean, yeah, everything gets everything gets assigned numbers. There's only
yeah,
this many of this.
yeah.
There's only um
Do you know if with the rankings whether like if you're was it only like a certain number of people that would get that notification? Because that'd be really shitty if you were at the bottom and you get this notification. I
um
mean, you wouldn't necessarily
no,
know, I
you
guess.
did. Like
Oh, okay.
someone was getting the last yeah,
Oh,
that like actually I didn't think about that much until you just mentioned it. And
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, that's horrible.
yeah.
It's one thing to be yeah, and then is that supposed to motivate you to do better? Like what
I
is
don't know if
that?
it would motivate
I was
me.
actually, as you're saying this, I remember now too. Some of my best friends in the class were near the bottom of the
Okay.
ranking.
Okay. Okay.
And I actually got along best.
Yeah.
It was like, number one and number 100 were
Yeah.
best friends. It
Yeah.
was, I can't remember what the ranking was, but one of my good friends at the time, he was just more down to earth, I found.
Mm.
Like,
Mm.
and I got along with people like that better
Mm.
than some of the more high strung people, even though it seemed like maybe I was high strung myself. But I
I feel like
remember like as I wasn't fitting into certain groups, I was definitely becoming more friends with people that were sort of just interested in different things outside of school.
yeah. I feel like maybe that's why we got along in high school. You were like that number one, and I was kind of like near the bottom, and we were just like,
You were
I gotta
waiting to
help, I
say
gotta
that,
help this
Jeff.
guy
You
out.
were waiting.
This guy needs some help here. And I'm just mindful of the time. I know you said you didn't have
Yeah,
as
I
much
know
time
this has
today,
gone
but
on too long.
but I'm happy to do like a sort of a part two because I want to get to like sort
Yeah,
of where you transition to, man. Like you have you're wearing a shirt about motorcycles and this passion that
yeah,
kind
I
of
wore
came out of
my
there.
motorcycle shirt
Yeah,
today.
and then just your fabrication work and all that. But do you want to do a part two maybe at some point
Yeah,
or
I'm open to that.
okay? And then and then
I
maybe I
hope
give you more.
I hope this didn't get like, too drawn out.
I love.
Um,
I think this was I think there's so much value for people if they actually listen to your story about just the journey you
yeah,
went into, and so I always appreciate these conversations. I think that will also give you time to take on those two questions that I told you
yeah,
last.
yeah. This is
So
something to
maybe we'll hold on to that, um, but maybe just to conclude here, Brian, I have a lot of respect for you. Really appreciate hearing your story, and I've learned a lot about just you over the course of this conversation. I mean, some things I think I knew, which kind of seem to still hold true, and there's some things that I've seen some sort of shifts in how I thought I knew you, which is really interesting and all for the good. So just appreciate you making time for me, and glad we're getting to catch up in this way. And I know it's kind of public, but it's kind of neat, right? And I just appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing these kind of challenges that you've gone through. So thanks for making time, man.
Yeah, for sure. I'm happy to sort of talk honestly about what I've gone through, and honestly, like I think going through what I've gone through and getting to the point where I'm approaching middle age, but I don't want to talk too much. I don't know why I say that. Like sometimes I'm saying I'm approaching middle age, and it's like, really, you should be thinking that at 38.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Maybe mortality is on my mind from the
Mm,
thyroid stuff and whatever.
mm.
But no, I'm happy to talk about my struggles and things and about some of the cool stuff I've done because yeah, it's good to sort of share
What are
share
your
experiences, right? People need to talk about that.
in part two? We'll get to your businesses, but just quickly, where can people find you in social media and
So
the work that
yeah,
you
we
do?
haven't even talked about that, but
No, no.
my I have basically two businesses now. Um, one of them is a motorcycle business, and one of them is a custom metalwork
Mm,
business in general. So you can find me at motobrix.
mm.
That's what this shirt is. I'm promoting myself.
Yeah, I see that.
Um, something I don't usually do. Yeah,
So vain,
motobrix.
so vain of you.
So vain.
Yeah.
It's at motobrix, motobrix,
Okay.
and then you can also find me at Route 2 Engineering. So it's ROOT, like the square root.
Mm,
Um, the number two,
mm.
ENG. That's the Instagram handle.
Okay. Well,
Uh, yeah,
yeah, we'll include all those things in the show notes so people can find you. Thanks for your time again. Looking forward to part two whenever we can do that. Hopefully sometime soon and continue the conversation, talk more about these businesses and this passion that you
yeah.
have for metalwork and just sort of what's next. And
You were going to talk about Fusion Brothers. I can't remember what that is even.
well,
I remember it was something we talked
it
about,
was a
but
revolutionary idea, my friend. You, and a couple other friends, or maybe just one other friend from high school. I can't remember. We could talk about that offline. But essentially, I think you had. Did you work at a nuclear power plant for a co-op job?
it was a I never worked at the actual plant,
No,
but
but so maybe something to do with designing of reactors. I don't know. I can't
yeah,
remember.
I worked for companies that design nuclear reactors
Yeah, and so I
or
think you came
worked on
back.
the parts.
I think you came back from that co-op term, and you're like, and I think we asked you about, just nuclear technology, and you're like, it's fission right now, but fusion is where it's at. Like, we gotta solve this fusion problem, guys. If we can solve this fusion problem, I
Oh
think we
my
may have
God.
had some drinks or whatever, and you're like, we solve this fusion problem, this is gonna be like revolutionary. And so you're like, and we're like, well, let's call
And the
ourselves the
company was
Fusion
going to be called.
Brothers. The Fusion
Oh my
Brothers.
God.
Yes. And you were going to be the lead, obviously the lead engineer. I was going to be the public relations guy. And I can't remember the other person. I think he was going to be more on the environmental side or whatever. And this is going to be a thing. And of course, we know nuclear fusion is like kind of been the holy grail that people are trying to go towards, right? And
Yeah,
so,
it's not exactly something that is that easy to figure out,
no, no. But yeah, I'd love to talk to you
even
about
if
just
you're number one at Waterloo.
the title of this. I normally don't do sound bites for my titles, but like I'm gonna have like Brian Cates, number one engineer, and something something something. I don't know, but yeah, use that to
Yeah.
my advantage. So
Okay.
yeah,
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing,
I
but
don't know.
I'm
We'll
gonna
see.
go with it.
Yeah, I don't know how it's gonna show up. What else was I say? Yeah, and maybe in the next part too, I would love to just hear about just like world things that you think about, or things that are on your mind, or things that you're kind of concerned about. So I'm sure there's
Okay.
some. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we could do multiple parts. I always have this is like when it's like the same as when we were kids, right? Like I can still
100%.
talk to you. I can talk to you like super easy. Uh,
Do you remember
even though
that?
we haven't talked for like what 15 years, whatever it's been. Maybe not
I
that long. It's
I
been a while.
yeah, I was telling Brian that if the podcast doesn't go, if it's 45 minutes or less, it's kind
Yeah.
of a shitty podcast. This is not one of those. This is, I could honestly talk to you for
I
hours.
knew when he said you said that, and I was like, "There's no way. This is not going to be one of those." I mean, it might be boring in other ways, but
Yeah,
it's not going to
yeah.
be. We're not going to stop talking. I'll just
No,
talk everyone's heads off.
this is I'm sure you remember this. Like there were many times where we'd go out like late at night or whatever, and then you'd drive me home, and we'd just be sitting in front of my house, just in the car, talking about stuff for hours. So
Yeah, just chatting.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was
Um,
always a
yeah,
conversationalist, one
yeah,
on one.
yeah. It was good. It's been a pleasure, my friend. We'll set up
Yeah,
part two a little bit later, but if I don't talk to you before the holiday break, man, enjoy your. I don't know if you're taking any time off, but enjoy this month.
yeah.
And
No big plans for me,
okay,
but
okay. Well, maybe we'll see if we can
yeah,
find some time during the holidays, or if after that into the new year. But part two to come,
for sure.
everyone. So, all
Yeah,
right.
thanks a lot.
Thanks everyone for joining us. We'll
Okay.
see you in part two, and talk to you later, Brian.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.